Some great networking going on. I like that. That's good.
Yeah. Welcome back to campus. This is our first time back here since 2019 in November. My name is Jeff Gallo. I'm a partner with Brennan Fender's CPA here in Orlando. I'm a co-founder with CEO Leadership Forums. We have a different model today, okay? And we are very, very excited about it. I'm going to have one of my Valencia college deans share some about it, but you know, the whole concept behind CEO Leadership Forums is to bring owners of businesses into the classroom and get really great content. You're going to be hearing today from Dr. Steve Swavely. He's going to talk and walk you through some pretty exciting experiences in a workshop setting, and that's what this is. This is roll up your sleeves workshop. Okay, and the nice thing here is we have a number of Valencia College students that are in here, and they're here for a particular reason. It's not just they wanted to be here just to show up and learn. They're going to be in a little competition, which Sherry will share with you. But CEO Leadership Forums was founded primarily as an educational channel, right, to get business owners into a classroom to get the latest and the greatest of concepts, ideas, technical information, and so forth. So we are made up of a number of different sponsor members, led by South State Bank. You've got Sean Murphy is right in the corner there. He and Scott Bradley represent South State Bank, and there are a host of 10 other co-sponsors along with us. So what you're going to have occur today, you see that there are lots of different tables. So there's going to be a lot of group dynamics. So folks that are in the back will be actually splintered in here. And you're going to be interacting, using easels and things like that.
And I call on the folks in the back, so you guys, you're not escaping by sitting in the back there.
Yeah, it's very, very good stuff. But this is an important milestone for us because we, for the first time, are formally engaging the students. Prior to this, actually prior to COVID, it was informal, it was voluntary. Folks came in, all right? With all of that, we've raised over $100,000 of student support since 2016. So that is the other part of it. This is not a charge for anybody to come in here, right? So our sponsor members think enough of what's going on that want folks to come in, experience, okay, and then a chunk of that money goes back to the college, right? So it's a really good model, but now we want to be able to engage students to meet firsthand business owners and ultimately, you know, make those types of connections so that they can potentially get internships and part-time jobs, full-time jobs, right? That's the idea. At this point, I would like to invite my friend Sherry Cutter, who's the Dean of the Business School, up here just to share specifically what this is and what we're going to be doing from here, what the students can expect going from here. Sherry.
Thank you. So good morning. I'm Sherry Cutter. I'm the Interim Dean of Business here on Valencia's West Campus. And we have, I think, a wonderful opportunity for our students because of you guys. And what it is in our baccalaureate programs, we have the opportunity to invite 8 of our students from engineering, allied health, and our Bachelor of Applied Science in Business and Organizational Leadership, baseball. Senior baseball, it's not an actual team. It's our business program. And they're here today to meet you, to learn from you, to network. We love coming to these because we get to learn from you. And so these are some of our engineering students, our business students are on their way. And what they're going to be doing is working with you, working together as teams to put together academic posters. They're going to come back this May to one of our business courses, and they're going to present in the courses. And what they're going to be presenting on is their big takeaways from our guest speaker today. bringing that information back to other students, talking about the benefits of mentorship and networking. And then in September, they're going to come back for the next forum breakfast, and they're going to be presented with checks anywhere from $800 to $1,500. So they are student support funds that the students can use for anything. But I just, from us, Valencia College, really want to thank you guys, because you're the ones that's making all this information come to life for them. And just, like I said, serving as mentors and partners with the college. So we thank you very much.
Very good. All right, thanks, Sharon. I appreciate it. Okay, at this point, as you can tell, we have some video cameras going on. Some of you may be interviewed at the end of this for your perspectives, but obviously we're going to have the student staff here editing this so that you have a really nice takeaway in about 3 or 4 weeks, right, Mo? Okay, so you'll see the PowerPoints, and you'll also have these things in nice, visible segments. So at this point, I'd like Sean Murphy to come up and introduce his good friend, Dr. Steve Swable. All right, Sean.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sean Murphy. I'm a relationship manager with South State Bank. I've been in the Orlando market 30 years this coming August. I came here kicking and screaming from University of Miami. Man, saying Orlando's the country. I want to go to Orlando. But I came here thinking that this was going to be a pit stop before I went to New York and did M&A work. But instead, realized that I can do the kind of work that I want to do here in Orlando and help build out the infrastructure of Orlando. And so for the last 25 years, I've been involved with organizations like this. I remember when Jeff came to Orlando from Houston with this concept 7 years ago. I was working with In Perspective, and we were like, heck yeah, we're all over this. And so Center State Bank was involved with it. That's how I got involved with South State. But anyway, I love this concept. 5 years ago, Steve.
At least 5 years ago.
Yeah. 5 years ago in February of 2018, I interviewed with, back then it was BB&T, the BB&T Leadership Institute. And so if any of you all know about the SMART Awards or ACG Orlando, I was one of the founders of that. And one of the things that I realized when we were running ACG and from the Chamber of Commerce, if you know Jacob Stewart, I realized that there was no leadership, real serious leadership training going on in Orlando. And I was like, man, if we want to be a competitive environment, we need something like that. We used to go to Highway in the Hills. I took my team when I ran ACG, and we killed it at ACG because I brought the kind of stuff that Steve's going to talk about to ACG. And so we would go to Highway in the Hills. My family, I got adopted by a family in Okeechobee, Florida, right? And so they owned this 10,000 square foot compound in 2008. And I was telling my mom, I was like, we need to turn that into a retreat facility. And because of the economy back then, it didn't work. But anyway, I interviewed with Steve in 2018. He was running the BB&T Leadership Institute. And I found out about this through the regional president at BB&T. And I was like, man, we can bring this to Orlando, to the state of Florida. And it was all around self-awareness, neuropsychology, and how the mind works. And like, heck yeah. And I grew up a Tony Robbins guy. I've been in sales in Orlando and very successful at it, all because of my mindset. And I wake up every morning thinking, I'm gonna beat all y'all at the game. Nobody in here can beat me. And it's all about mindset. And so we can be friends, but at the same time, it's all about mindset. And when I met with Steve, you know, you go in, you got 30 minutes dedicated to the interview process. I think Steve and I talked for like an hour and a half.
At least we went through lunch, I think. Yeah.
We just talked and talked with books on this bookshelf. And I know that one, I know that one. And so BB&T merged with Truist, or SunTrust became Truist. And so the bank changed. We got older. And so Steve was like, you know what, I'm retiring. They asked me to go into another role. I didn't like that role, so I came to South State, which was a phenomenal situation for me. But when Steve left the bank a year ago, or maybe 6 months ago, I called him. I was like, man, I'm involved with this Leadership Institute, or this leadership forum. I'd love to have you come down and speak to us. And so Steve's a University of Florida grad, Palm Beach County, born and raised. Met him up there, we hit it off like that. He's a PhD in neuropsychology. And so 25 years ago, Steve worked at a hospital. And so Steve went through the BB&T Leadership Institute, which was called Farr and Associates. And they do everything around neuropsychology, how the mind works, and how you communicate and stuff like that, and perspective on life. And so he went through their legacy program and was like, man, I want to go work for this organization. And so Steve went and started working for the BB&T Leadership Institute. And when I started working for the organization in 2018, he was the head of the consulting practice. So if you go to their website right now, there's going to be like 8-10 different programs that they offer.
Yeah, they're growing. They
Right.
continue to add
And
programs.
Steve was giving blessings on most of those programs. Their stuff is all created in-house. There's nothing they're taking off of, most of the stuff anyway. And so with that being said, I love that kind of stuff. I pay attention to it. And I'm not telling you that because he's right here, but there's nobody on this planet that can compete with him when it comes to this type of work. And I used to be out in the marketplace. It was frustrating in Orlando because we couldn't, it's like today, I had 5 people registered for this event and none of them here. I'm like, it's very, very frustrating that our town doesn't take advantage of stuff like this. And so I'm very disappointed with the turnout. We had 50 people registered for this event. And we just don't, the mindset isn't right. But anyway, for y'all that are here, we're going to get what we need.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
We're going to get what we need. And the fact is that we're going to keep winning. And with that being said, Steve is an incredible resource. He has a book that's either out or coming out. With that being said, Steve Swaber.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, so just raise your hand if you're a student. I just want to see how many students we have in the room. Okay. Okay. Great. So at some point today, after I'm going to do a little presentation to kind of set the stage, set the context, and then we're going to do some activities. And what I'd like to do is have students, when we do the activities, pair up with a business owner so that you guys are interacting together and doing the activity that we're going to be doing as a team. It'll give you an opportunity to kind of catch a sense of what it's like to own a business, because you're going to be interacting with real business owners. And the business owners I think that's a great opportunity for you to give to the students. So we'll try to make that pairing happen as best as we can. A comment about, because Sean said something that really is the crux of where we're heading today. And that is the comment about we invite people to come to these and the show up is so limited, yet leadership is so important. Leadership is the key to success in business. And we're going to dig down into exactly what is leadership and what does it have to do with difficult times, and what does it have to do with managing an organization through recession or any difficult time for that matter. And it really comes down to understanding what makes people tick, right? And let me start with asking you guys a question. Why do leaders struggle in difficult times? You know, there's a saying out there, it's easy to steer the ship when the sea is calm. It's easy to steer the ship when the sea is calm. So my question is, why do leaders struggle in difficult times? Let's hear it from you guys.
Distractions.
Distractions, yeah. difficult times create distractions, such as, for example, what? Employee, yeah, we begin, that can be a challenge for a business, employees leaving, right? That can make difficult times for a business, and also during difficult times, people will move around. We saw that with COVID, right? That was an unprecedented difficult time, and employees spread out, they left, and people changed what they were doing. Great. What's another reason that leaders struggle during difficult times?
Indecision.
Say again?
Indecision.
Indecision, yes, indecision. They don't know what to do. They don't have enough data, they think, to make a decision, so they stay stuck, right? And what's it called? Paralysis by inanalysis or something like that, right? You get stuck, right? What else?
Cash flow.
Cash flow, yeah, there's a financial issue that goes on there. And cash flow creates what kind of problems for a business?
Paying bills.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a business is about, right? Creates all kinds of problems. Yeah.
Yeah, employees.
Employee problems, yeah. And say more about employee problems. What kind of employee problems?
Well, the worst would be not meeting payroll, and you've got anarchy and deciding, do I need to let people go, do I need to keep them? A lot of times you have relationships with those people when you're trying to let them go.
Yeah, and you meeting payroll, that's a huge responsibility of a business owner. Absolutely.
Then all the vendors will-
Yep, vendors. What else?
Getting work.
Getting work. Yeah. I've talked to a couple people today. Said, I got to get the phone to ring, right? I got to get and I said, I can't remember who I talked with. I don't see him.
He was right here. I think he went to the bathroom.
Oh, he's out to the bathroom. Okay. And I said, nothing happens until somebody sells something. And he said, yeah, I would say nothing happens until the phone rings. And that's so true, right? You gotta make things happen. In difficult times, business becomes difficult, right? So all those are really legitimate and true reasons why leaders struggle in difficult times. But we're going to go a little deeper than that. We're going to go a little deeper, and I have a story. It's just a short story that is a great example of the kinds of conversations that I have with leaders that I think is going to set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to call him Bob. Bob wasn't his real name, but Bob was the CFO of a large Fortune 500 company, and he'd been there about a year and a half. He was a new CFO for the company, and he was struggling in his role. He was struggling to fit in with the culture of the organization. And so I was asked to work with Bob to help Bob be more effective in his role. And my conversation with Bob went something like this. I said, so, Bob, one of the things I like to do as I begin to work with people is I like to understand a little bit more about you as a person. Okay if I ask you some questions? Oh yeah, sure, Steve, go ahead, shoot, fire away. So, Bob, tell me, what is your favorite thing about the job that you have? What do you like about your role as CFO and leader at this organization? He said, well, Steve, I'm responsible for the financial integrity of the organization. I'm responsible for making sure the organization hits its budgets, that divisions of the organization stay on budget. Ultimately, I'm responsible for the financial profitability of this organization. And I love that responsibility. And I love the work that requires me to do. And I said, that's great, Bob. That does sound like a lot of responsibility, and I can tell you're passionate about it. Now tell me, what don't you like about your job as CFO and a leader in this organization? And he paused, and he said, Steve, this would be the greatest job in the world if I just didn't have to deal with the people. And that is the crux of what I'm going to be talking about today. The people issues. The people issues. We struggle with difficult times because of people issues. All the things that you guys said create people issues. And as a leader, understanding how to manage those issues is critical and important. And as we're going to see, that is something that a lot of organizations maybe don't give enough attention to. There is, I'll use the whiteboard for this one, I think. There's a concept, I call it the leadership ladder. And it's this idea that everything, can everybody see this positioned okay? Everything that you do on the job exists on a continuum. At one end of the continuum are task-oriented things. That's doing the work of the business or doing the work that you were trained to do. So if you went to school to be a CPA, it's balancing the books. If you are an IT person, it's writing the code. If you went to business school, it's doing something that keeps the business operation in process. That is the task piece of an organization and what you do in a business. At the other end of the continuum are relationship-oriented things. This is about the people side of the business. It's about relating with customers. It's about relating with employees. It's about relating with your team. And at the bottom of the leadership ladder, when you first get out of school, I know we have, this is not working well. I know we have some engineering students in here. We've got some, well, none of those are working. Let me see if one of these is better. We've got some business students in here. We have some, I think, allied health students in here. When you get out of school, when you first get your first role in an organization, you're going to be down here on the bottom of the leadership ladder, right? And you're going to be doing whatever you were trained to do as an engineer or as a business person or as an allied health professional. And where you're going to spend your time and energy is over on this side of the continuum. Your focus, your effort is really on getting the task done. Now, you got to have the capacity to get along with your teammates and you got to get along with your boss. So there's some relationship component to it. But by and large, you're focused on doing the task. Now, what happens if you're really good at doing the task? You get promoted. Yeah, you get put in charge of a project. And now all of a sudden, you've got to start getting things done through people. You've got to help get the team, whatever that project is, whatever that team is made up of, you've got to help get that project done through them. So there's a shift that begins to take place. And we begin to focus more on building the relationship. And the higher you go on the leadership ladder, the more that shift takes place. Whereas at the top of the leadership ladder, you're probably doing, if you're running your organization correctly, you're probably doing very little of the task. You're focused on getting things done through people. You are building an organization by getting people, delegating people, tasks to the people, right? Now, don't misunderstand my graph here. It doesn't mean that at the top, tasks become unimportant. It just means that your focus is getting things done through the people. And the higher we go on that leadership ladder, the more important relationships become. Let's take a little bit deeper dive into this. As you can see, I'm starting to make the case for the importance of relationships. But let's just look at what I call the high-performing organization. What makes up a high-performing organization? At the top, the very first thing, an organization, in order to be high-performing, has to have some kind of purpose. Raise your hand if you're a business owner in here. Okay. Craig, what's the purpose of your organization?
We help people find the right coverage for themselves.
Okay. Helping people find the right coverage. Another business.
Helping people with their finances and accounting.
Helping people with their finances, accounting, great.
Be the best product supply to all customers.
Product supply to all customers. Excellent. So we all, as an organization, we have a purpose. Now, the business owners in here will tell you that in order to achieve that purpose, you got to have a quality product or service. Achieving your purpose depends on having a quality product or service. Having a quality product or service depends on having quality processes in place to either create that product or deliver that service. Having processes in place and having those processes be effective depends on good communication. Without good communication, the best processes in the world won't help. You've got to have good communication. Good communication depends on good relationships. Think about it. How well do you communicate with people that you have a good relationship with versus people that you don't have a good relationship with, right? Communication suffers with the latter. You have this idea that, you know what, I hate to go to talk to Steve. Every time I go in his office, it's like fingernails grinding on a chalkboard. And so we avoid communicating. And so having good communication depends on having good relationships. But we're going to go even deeper than that, because good relationships depends on our beliefs. Our beliefs, our mindset, as Sean said, our beliefs about the environment that I'm working in, our beliefs about the culture, our beliefs about our team, our beliefs about our product. And those beliefs are dependent on our perceptions. How we perceive things. Whether it's an accurate perception or not, it creates a belief. And in order for us to achieve our purpose, we got to pay attention to this stuff down here. This is the technical part of the business. Delivering the product, creating the product. This is the people side of the business, what I call the human system. So we got the technical system and the human system. When I work with companies, when I sit down with a company that's struggling or a team that's struggling, and I begin to have a conversation with them to figure out, okay, what's going on? Why is this organization struggling? Why is this team struggling? What I always hear, without fail, is we got a communication problem. Not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because what's happening is the organization is trying to deal with the problem in the middle of it, in the middle of the process. If we're going to accurately solve communication problems, we got to get down here and we got to understand what's going on with perceptions, beliefs, and relationships. That's how you solve communication problems. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about this human system down here and how the human system is critical as we move through difficult times, whether it be recessionary difficulties, industry difficulties, regulatory difficulties, whatever the difficulties are, the stuff that we'll be talking about today will apply. So we've talked about the leadership ladder, the importance of relationships. We've talked about why that human system matters, because we can't achieve our purpose without paying attention to this down here. Now let's talk a little bit about why the human system falters, particularly when we're going through difficult times. This is where the neuropsychology begins to come into play. And think about it this way. If we think about a graph of performance on the vertical axis, and we'll call it stress or difficulties, we'll call it stress on the horizontal axis. What does that graph look like? Performance against stress.
A line
A line, yeah? Which way does that
Down.
line go?
goes down.
It goes down, yeah. I mean, and that's, kind of, that's what people kind of think about is the idea that when stress is low, performance is high, and as stress goes up, that performance drops. It's actually only half the story. In psychology, there are very few laws. In physics, you got some great laws. Engineers know, the engineers know there's laws of physics. You can't defy it. There are very few laws in psychology. But one of the laws in psychology is called the Yerkes-Dodson law, after the people that discovered it. And it is a powerful, powerful law that has been shown to be true in all people, all organisms, actually, not just humans. And it's the stress curve. And it's half the story that you just mentioned. What the stress curve actually looks like is a bell curve. Now, why might that be? Why might performance be lower when stress is lower?
No urgency.
No urgency, exactly. That's exactly right. There's no consequences. If I get my paycheck, whether I get out of bed in the morning, there's no stress there, right? But there's also no performance. And so we all operate under some form of this curve. We have our performance, and we all have some level of stress. And as stress levels rise, our performance actually goes up to a point. At some point, we hit a critical point, and our performance drops. Now let's look at what's going on inside the brain to cause this to happen. That is my primitive drawing of a brain. And I've drawn it as if it's facing like this, okay? And pretend we're cutting right through the middle of it so we can peer inside of the brain. There are two pieces of the brain, two parts of the brain that are critical to understand the stress curve. One of those is deep inside the brain, kind of a horseshoe-shaped structure. It's called the limbic system. The limbic system is responsible for our emotions, all of the emotions. Those emotions that feel good, those emotions that don't feel so good, or positive and negative emotions. It drives emotion. It's the part of the brain that creates that emotion. And then there's a real tiny piece of the brain right up here, right at the very tip, very small but very powerful part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain where thinking occurs. It's the part of the brain that makes us human. Concept formation, decision making, problem solving, reasoning, all happens up there in that very tiny piece of the brain. And as we go through our workday, dealing with beliefs and relationships and communication, those two parts of the brain are working together. They're interacting with each other. And when we're operating up here on the stress curve, we're in that area where performance is high and stress is up there, but we haven't gone over the curve. What we see, if we were to put somebody into a fMRI scanner, today we have these devices, you can actually watch the brain think. You can watch it process information. And it allows us, that technology has allowed us to learn so much about what goes on in the brain under different conditions. If we put somebody in an fMRI scanner and looked at what parts of the brain were activated and how much were they activated, at this part of the stress curve, what we would see is that about 30% of the energy is coming from that limbic system, and 70% is up here in the thinking mode. The emotion drives the thinking process. And the higher we go on that stress curve, the more that this number gets higher and this number gets lower. Has to add up to 100. And there's a switch that gets flipped when we cross over the peak here and we begin on our downward slide here. And that switch that is flipped is when this number here is smaller than this number here. And so we get to where there's a flip, and this is, say, 40, and this is 60. That's called the limbic system hijack. And it's where the emotional system takes over. It happens during difficult times. It happens during stress. And when that happens, at the very moment, the very time we need to be thinking clearly, and we need to be making good decisions, and we need to be able to solve problems, the part of our brain that's responsible for doing that is shutting down. It's been hijacked by the emotional system. And managing that emotional system is a key piece to managing an organization and yourself through difficult times. There are 4 obstacles that keep us from doing that. 4 obstacles that keep us from managing and developing the human system. One is that those human system skills are outside the comfort zone of many people. Remember Bob? When Bob said, you know, it's the people. This would be the greatest job in the world if I just didn't have to deal with people. And I said, well, Bob, what is it about the people that makes it so difficult for you? He says, oh, I'm so uncomfortable. When they bring drama into the organization, when they bring problems, I'm so uncomfortable in dealing with that. I don't know how. That's not Bob's fault. He was never given any instruction in how to handle those kind of things. He was never taught any kind of leadership skills. He went to school to be a CFO, and he learned a lot about finance, but he didn't learn a whole lot about people skills. So it's uncomfortable for him. That's one obstacle. It's uncomfortable. And we're going to do some things today that may make you feel a little uncomfortable, because we're going to have you look at your own human system. But don't worry, we're not going to go too deep, but we are going to take a look at, okay, what makes me tick as a human system? The second obstacle is the belief that human system skills can't be trained. I hear all the time when I'm introduced to a client or a potential client, and they're trying to figure out, you know, exactly how they can make their organization better. And I talk about some of these things about, you know, helping build relationships, not just focus on communication, but build relationships and help people shift their beliefs, the mindset, as Sean talked about. Make sure they got the right mindset. And I always get this question: well, can you really change people? Can you really change people's beliefs? Can you really get people to change how they are? The answer is yes, if you know how to do it. If you've been trained in how to do it, if you understand what makes people tick, the answer to that is absolutely yes. But there's still this belief out there that we can't do that. The third obstacle is that the human system is often overlooked as the root of many business challenges. Now, I won't say every single business challenge, but I would say 99% of them have at the root cause a people issue. It's a people problem at the root cause. Let's just talk about for a second recession. That was a topic of our talk today. Leading through recession, difficult times. What is the people problem in an organization that's dealing with recession? Craig, what do you think it is?
Well, you start having employees have fear that they're going to be laid off, their life's going to change, whatever. And the irony is, instead of them digging in and performing at a higher level,
Bingo.
they choose to do nothing.
Exactly. This happens. They get a limbic system hijack. Fear takes over, and instead of doing things that they have control over, they sit back and they are kind of like a deer caught in the headlights. They freeze. And I would challenge you, whatever business issue that you're dealing with, spend some time thinking about what is the people issue that's at the core of this. People issues are at the core of every single business challenge. I have yet to find a business challenge that there wasn't some people issue that didn't have a role in it. And then finally, and this one is really important, we're going to spend some time talking about this. Leaders really don't understand their own human system. They don't understand what makes them tick. Not surprising because they've never really had the opportunity to evaluate it. They went to school to be a business person or an engineer or a physical therapist, right? And they don't understand the people. So I see Rachel nodding her head saying, yep. Rachel, by the way, is an engineer. I love engineers because this stuff is so relevant to them. So relevant. So we have these 4 areas. The bottom line is that organizations struggle through difficult times because we have neglected developing the human system in organizations. The business owners in here, raise your hand if you're a business owner. Put your hand, keep it up, okay? All right. If you believe this is true, leave your hand up. Students, take a look. The people that are running businesses today recognize this. Thank you.
I just want to say, being one of the older guys in here, 62 years old, the pace of life causes you to neglect yourself. So the distractions, the drive to succeed, all that stuff, every single person who is in a position of responsibility faces that. And every single morning, I have to wake up, and I'm a spiritual guy. I learn to get on my knees and just pray for guidance, because that is the thing that oftentimes gets smoked out. And everything you're saying here is spot on.
And what you just described, Jeffrey, again, is this, right? As a business owner, you lay awake at night thinking, how am I going to meet payroll? I got 100 people that their families depend on making payroll. That begins to put us up at the top or even over the edge of the stress curve. And this takes place. We got to learn how to manage that. We got to understand that in ourselves. And that's part of what we're going to do, is begin to look at the human system within ourselves. So how can neuropsychology help with this? Well, I mean, I think the answer is pretty obvious, but let's kind of dig into it a little bit, because I do want to make a couple points that I think are really important as we think about how do we manage the human system. First off, a lot of times people ask me, why do you talk about it as neuropsychology versus neuroscience? There's been a lot of press recently around neuroscience in business over the last 5 years or so. That's not bad, that's good. In 2018, the Consulting Psychology Journal came out with an entire issue on the neuroscience of consulting psychology. An entire issue dealing with neuroscience in business. Harvard Business Review in 2019, a special issue, the brain science behind business. And this is good. This is good for businesses, but it's incomplete because they're missing a piece here. We're missing a piece because we're not paying attention to the psychology side. That's why I talk about it as neuropsychology. Think about neuropsychology as the blending of 2 sciences. It's a science of the brain, neuroscience, and the science of the mind, psychology. Think about, I like to use the analogy of a computer. Think about the computer itself as the brain. It's the silicone chips, the wiring, the motherboard, the thing that actually, when you go to the store and you buy a computer and you walk out, that's like the brain part of this equation. The mind is the software that runs the computer, the programming. And we all have a computer the brain, and we all have programming, our mind. And those two interact to create the beliefs that we have and the perceptions that we have that impact our relationships and so forth. A computer with no software is worthless. Software with no computer is worthless. We got to interact. We got to make those two interact. And so we're going to talk about both brain and mind as it relates to dealing with difficult times. Dr. Robert Hogan, who was a pioneer in bringing some of this stuff into the business world, has a saying. I saw this about 15 years ago. That when I started working at the Leadership Institute, about almost 17 years ago, and this saying really set my philosophy for how to work with leaders. And the saying is, who you are is how you lead. Somebody interpret that for me. What does that mean? Who you are is how you lead. Okay, this is where I start calling on people. I'm going to come back. Wait, okay, we got to.
If you're responsible, then you'll lead other people to be responsible.
Okay, yeah, kind of like whatever the leader does, the rest of the organization will do. Absolutely, yes. There's a whole science around the idea of what's called executive amplitude, which is as a leader, you're sending off signals. Amplitude's a physics term, kind of talks about the strength of a signal. As the leader, you're sending off really strong signals that people are picking up on. And what a leader does, the organization's going to follow. The culture is kind of defined by its leadership. Great. Who else? Yes.
So what I found in working with business owners is that you come across business owners that are usually, I'll say they lead by fear, or they lead by being people persons and developing their organization through profit on people.
Yeah.
And I've seen both, and the first one does not work nearly as well as the second.
Yeah, great. So just make sure everybody heard that. Right? Business owners tend to lead organizations in one of two ways. Either through fear, they drive performance, it's my way or the highway, or through developing people. And what did you say? Your experience is?
That the first does not work nearly as well as the second.
As the second. And I will propose to you that you got to be able to do both. Not necessarily create fear, but you got to know, when do you push people forward? When do you take people that are operating down here and move them up a bit by becoming directive, by becoming assertive? And by the same token, if you're supporting people, if you're guiding people, that's great, as long as you don't overdo that, right? Because then you have people that stay down here.
That's challenging, not fear.
Say again?
It's challenging the person, not making them.
Yes, exactly. And it's exactly where we're going to talk about that. The idea that we challenge them as opposed to drive them. Yeah.
But to follow up on what she just said with the challenge, that's a great word. Again, what I've seen is that when you challenge a person, you can do it one of two ways. You can do it through saying those 99 things you did are wrong and never recognize the one thing they did right. Or conversely, the 99 things they did right, the one thing they did wrong, you jump all over them.
Well, I've got to respond to that. I don't think that's a challenge. Challenge is like when you want to get better in tennis or something. You don't say to the person who goes out, you say you can do it better with a drop shot. You challenge them and you train them or teach them to do it better. And then say, you got to 5, can you get to 7? Not, you're an asshole and, you did it wrong.
Let me jump ahead, because just a little bit, and this, we're going to talk a little bit about this later this morning, but this is a great discussion to just kind of make a point and bring it out right now.
Of course I'm right.
I'm going to show you both are right. I gotta find the pen that works here. Okay, so psychologists love our graphs. All right, here's another graph for you to look at, and think about this. Every person comes into the job with a skill set, And every job comes with a set of challenges. Skill versus challenge. And people exist on, some people have low skill sets, some have high. Some jobs have low challenges, some have high challenges. They're very complex, difficult jobs. And there's a band that runs right down the middle of this graph here. Psychologists call it the flow zone. And it's where there's a balance between the challenge that a person faces and the skill that they have to meet that challenge. And our job as a leader is to get people in that flow zone. If we've got someone that's operating out here with a job that's got a high complexity level and their skill set is low and they're operating here, what's going to be that person's experience that's in that zone? Negative, overwhelmed, yeah. What's going to be the person that's got a job that is not challenging and they have a high skill set? They're bored. Our job as a leader is to keep people in the flow zone. And people they're not stagnant. They move, right? So over time, their skill set grows. And if we're not paying attention, they get into the bored zone. Jobs don't stay the same. What you did last year to be successful is not necessarily enough to be successful this year. So sometimes the challenges will grow. And we have to pay attention to this as we begin to work with teams, and particularly managing them and leading them through difficult times. In difficult times, people will move into both of these zones if we're not paying attention for one reason or another. Okay, so that's a little prelude for where we're headed a little bit later today. And I'll come back to that chart later on this morning. So the who you are is how you lead. Really what we're talking about there is personality. You bring your personality into your leadership. Leadership and personality are intertwined so much that they're almost the same thing. Who you are, your personality, is going to dictate how you lead. It's going to determine, are you one of those leaders that drives people, or are you one of those leaders that nurtures people? Are you somewhere in the middle? Yeah. Are you somewhere able to know when to challenge people? And do you know when to kind of nurture and guide them a little bit and let them struggle on their own a little bit? So, let's talk a little bit about the components of personality. First, what is personality? This is a quiet group.
Values?
Huh?
Values?
Values, definitely, yes. Part of what makes up our personality are our values. What else?
Temperament.
I'm sorry.
Temperament.
Temperament? Yeah, what is temperament?
Your behavior,
Your attitude, yeah.
Your overall
Yeah.
behavior.
Okay, so we've got our values, we've got our temperament. What else?
How you act out your beliefs.
Yes, how you act out your beliefs. You guys just named the 3 components of personality. Great job. Think about it this way. There are 3 components of our personality. Our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior. And we know that our thoughts create emotions that drive behavior. And if we want to change this, we got to look at up here. Our thinking. And thoughts that's a big category. Our thoughts include things like our beliefs, our motives, our values, our ideas, our opinions, our concepts. Today, we're going to focus on beliefs. We're going to just focus on that narrow area of thoughts. We're going to focus on beliefs. And specifically, we're going to focus on 2 beliefs that are really, really important in understanding the human system and in understanding your own human system. One of those is a belief around how you need to be. I put that in quotation marks, how you need to be. This is a belief about how you think you need to be in order to obtain achievement and get approval. Where did you learn how to be? Your parents. Yes, your parents. Your parents. Our experiences. We get messages from our parents that help us learn how to be and how we need to believe in the world to be successful. We're going to dig real deep into that. We also have beliefs about our value as a person. Our belief about our value as a person. Where did that belief come from? God, yeah. That is, and that actually, I mean, when you think about our value as a person, I mean, that is, we're going to see, we lose sight of that. We lose sight of the fact that our value as a person is not dependent on how we think we need to be. And we're going to dig down into that a little bit to understand, again, what makes us tick. And this is going to be important because when we understand these things here, it allows us to manage this better. It allows us to keep the limbic system hijack from happening within ourselves. And we can also keep it from happening within our people by creating the right environment. Okay, so we're going to focus on those two beliefs. We're also going to take a look at emotions. Now, emotions are, it's one of those things that a lot of people are uncomfortable with. I like to say technical people are uncomfortable with it, but that's not always the case, and there are a lot of people that aren't technical folks that are comfortable with emotions and that aren't comfortable. But by and large, our culture kind of downplays emotion. And we don't even have a language to talk about it. When Sean said, I grew up in Florida, grew up down in West Palm Beach, and I had never seen snow until I got married. And my wife and I went on our honeymoon at a place where we went snow skiing. I'd never seen snow, and I was going snow skiing. And we're sitting in the hotel area for breakfast, and there's all these people that are there skiing. And I hear them talking about all the different kinds of snow. Anybody here a skier, snow skier? Yeah. Jeffrey, what kind of snow is there? When you think about snow and snow skiing, what do you think about?
Well, I'm from the Northeast, so I skied for 30 years. It's hard-packed ice and mobile. If you go out west, it's soft, fluffy.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
where you get a suntan.
Yeah, there's apparently, and this, a Florida boy, apparently there's soft snow, hard snow, crusty snow, sloshy snow. There's all these snows, right? And that gives us a language to communicate with each other, with other skiers. Same is true with emotion. We don't have a language to associate with emotion. Now, I'm going to give you that language today. I'm going to try something here. Hopefully, it'll work. Here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to just name some emotions. I'm going to put them up on the board here. Give them to me nice and loud so I can hear them. Anger, okay.
Joy.
Anger. Joy. Frustration. Satisfaction.
Doubt.
All right. I'm going to put doubt over here. Confident. I'm going to put that over here too.
Is that a special area of the board?
That's a special, yeah, for the special people. Right.
Fear.
Fear, yeah. Love. Say more about peace. Who said that?
I said.
Yeah. When peace, tell me what you're describing there.
Just being content.
Content. Yeah. Okay.
Positive.
Yeah. Say more. Who said it? Raise your hand.
Right here.
Yeah. Positive. Say more.
Is,
What's a positive emotion?
like open,
Laugh.
Optimism.
like optimism, yeah.
Did I hear laugh?
Laugh.
Laugh. I'm going to put that over here. Laugh. Just notice how much you're struggling with this, right? That's a great comment. It's positive. We talk about positive emotions and negative emotions. We say, well, give me a positive emotion. It's like, we don't have the language to talk about it, right? How can we ever deal with the human system if we can't even talk about emotions, right? Discouraged. Okay.
Sad.
Discouraged. Sad.
Elation.
Huh?
Elation.
Elation. Okay. Good.
Trusting.
All right. I'm going over here again.
I'm poking straws.
Excitement?
What?
Excitement?
Excitement. Yeah, definitely excitement.
Love.
We got love.
Hate.
Hate.
Worry.
Worried. Now we're anxiety. Okay, now we're cruising. Hopeless.
Happiness.
Hopeless.
Confused?
I think I heard happy. Did I hear happy? Yeah. My brain does not.
You're confused.
I'm confused. Yeah, confusion. I heard confusion.
Satisfied?
Satisfied. Yeah, we got satisfaction up there. Confusion. I'm going to put it over here. All right. It might not belong over here, but you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Confusion. Okay.
How about peaceful?
Peaceful. Yeah. That's a good one. If you have a feeling of peace. Okay. Good. Okay. That's good enough. So first, just notice we struggle with this a little bit, right? We struggle kind of coming up with these words. What do you notice about these three columns here? Anything that you notice about what makes up the three columns?
Positive, negative, neutral.
Yeah, there's positive, which is over here. And then we've got a negative, which is, you said neutral, but I would say they're both, so these are kind of negative, right? They're both negative, right? And what I've done here is I've categorized our emotions by what psychologists call the core primary emotion. And the core primary emotions, there's three of them, depending on, researchers in the field have a hard time agreeing on this, but for simplicity's sake, we're going to go with the three. It's a nice, easy model to understand. The three core emotions are joy, hurt, and fear. Every other emotion falls into some category of that. Anger is a form of fear. Hate's a form of fear. Anxiety is a form of fear. Hopeless is a form of hurt. Elation is a form of joy.
The thing I found interesting is much easier to come up with negative emotions than positive emotions.
Thank you for that observation. Yes. And notice there's two categories of that than there is for the positive. We come up with the negative before we come up with the positive. And the reason for that is because that's how our brain is wired. Our brain is wired to see the negative. We have actually 3 times more neuromachinery dedicated to finding problems than we do opportunities. Another challenge when we're going through difficult times. Because what happens is our brain wants to focus over there on the negative, the problem. And we miss the opportunity that's there. Sean, you got a question?
Can you say that one more time?
I'll try.
The negative and the brain.
Yeah,
3 times.
yeah. We have 3 times more neuromachinery dedicated to finding problems in the world than we do opportunities in the world, right? So we're combating that. We're combating that natural tendency to see things negative. That makes it even more difficult for leaders to lead during difficult times because everyone's brain is focusing on the negative. And our media today doesn't help with that, right? You turn on the TV and how many positive stories do you see compared to how many, stories about death and destruction and everything that's going wrong in the world, right? So this is going to help us have a language to deal with emotions. And and I'm just going to pass it out now. I call it your emotions cheat sheet. And it's a list of, tell you what, I'm going to put a clump here, pass them back, a clump here, pass them back, and a clump here, pass them back. Just hang on to it because we're going to use this here in a few minutes. You're going to need that cheat sheet. Yes?
You're saying that the brain has more mapping of negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is physiological, you're born that way, or were you trained to be negative as a child? And if you were trained, can you untrain the brain?
Oh, wow. Super deep, and we're headed exactly where we're headed. The question is, the negative, are we born that way? The answer is yes. We actually, and think about it, there's survival value to see the challenges, the problems out there as opposed to the opportunities. Think about how we evolved as a species, right? We're living out on the savannah. We're a primitive man or a primitive woman, and we get up, and in the morning we're walking down the path, and we hear something rustling in the bushes. What's the first thing that's going to come to mind? It's a tiger. I'm going to get eaten, right? A lion, right? We don't think, oh, maybe that's a rabbit that I could have for breakfast, right? Our brain is programmed for survival value to immediately attack the negative. And that's reinforced, as we will see in some cases, in how we're raised. We all get messages from our parents or important adults about who we are as a person. And we're going to dive really deep into that. I see a hand in the back there.
It's called negativity bias.
It's called negativity bias, yes. Yeah, we have a positive psychologist in the room. I don't know if positive psychology is a field of psychology that studies all the biases that exist. And there's actually hundreds of them. Anybody heard of what is it? I'm blanking on the store where you build your own furniture. IKEA, thank you. There's actually an IKEA bias. You know what the IKEA bias is? You value furniture that you get from IKEA because you built it yourself. You had to put it together. Yeah. There's actually shown scientific studies that people value that piece of furniture they put together more than one that's of similar or even more value that they just bought from the store. And our brain is wired to kind of see these, to have biases. There's lots of different biases that are out there. But you're right, this is the negativity bias. Okay. All right, so we're gonna talk more about emotions, and then finally behaviors. And I'm gonna focus on 2 different behaviors, 2 different types of behaviors. One are behaviors that you can see, other people can see, right? Like me up here presenting, moving my hands, walking around, negotiating. We have some behaviors that are associated with emotions. What's the behavior associated with anger typically? Yelling, yeah. And we have some things over here that I had over here in the penalty box. They aren't really emotions. What they are they are ways of thinking or acting that have an emotion attached to it, right? So confusion isn't really an emotion, but there can be an emotion attached to it, like maybe frustration. Or laughing, that's more behavior, right? But there's an emotion attached to it. Confident, that's more mindset, but there's an emotion attached to it. So we'll have these behaviors that we see, and we also have behaviors that are hidden. Now, a big prize goes to anybody who can come up with an example of a hidden behavior that you have. Okay, say more. You're on the right track. Body language. Remember, it's hidden. People can't see it, right? So there is certain body language that people see, like, right? Or, my wife, the eye roll, right? I tell her what I'm going to do. She goes, oh, my God, here we go again.
Blood pressure?
Yeah, well, yeah, blood pressure. Yeah, internal. Yeah, the body language or the body reactions to stress. Things such as tight jaw, tight neck muscles, churning stomach, red hot neck. Yeah, sweating. Sometimes people can see that. Back, tight back. Think about these things kind of happening in three places: your stomach, your chest, tight chest, heart racing, and then your head or your face, where you get tight muscles, tight jaw. Those are body reactions, and we're going to see. We're going to take this a little deeper here in just a few moments. Right? Okay. Just kind of keep this idea in your head, and we're going to build on it even more. And we're going to do that through a blueprint, if you will, for our mind and our brain. We're going to talk about taming the mind, leading yourself through difficult times. Right? How do you manage this in yourself? And a lot of it comes to understanding this at a little bit deeper level for yourself. How do you think you need to be to obtain approval and to achieve success? What's the value you have as a person? What are the emotions that drive you? And what are the behaviors that come out in the end? I'm going to help you go through that process. And then we'll talk about taming the brain and leading others through difficult times. Right? So we're going to lead. First, we got to lead ourselves. Lead yourself first. Right? Anytime you're leading an organization, you got to lead yourself first. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit, leading yourself first requires great self-awareness. That's really what we've been talking about here, awareness. Awareness of what are my beliefs? What are my emotions and what are my behaviors? Now, a lot of times people get confused about this term awareness. What exactly is awareness? And so what I want to do is I want to give you a really concrete definition of what awareness is. Okay? And it's a definition that a neuropsychologist, what I would say is awareness. Awareness is created by where we direct our attention. That's all awareness is. It's just about where we direct our attention. And we're aware of those things that we attend to, and we're unaware of those things that we don't attend to. So let's do a little experiment here. Become aware of this remote control. Focus your attention on that remote control, and just notice, what color is it? What shape is it? What is the texture of it? And while you were focusing on this, you missed, I added something up here. Because your awareness was over here, not up here. Okay? That's all awareness is. Becoming self-aware is about where do you focus your attention. If you don't focus your attention or spend any time reflecting on what are the beliefs that makes me the leader that I am, you're missing a huge amount of very useful information. If you don't focus on the emotions that get in the way or support your leadership, you're missing some really useful information. And if you don't focus on the behaviors that make you a good leader or maybe get in the way of your leadership, you're missing a lot of information. We've kind of touched on that last one up here that I put up, and it's where we're headed today in understanding who we are as people. Remember, we bring our personality into our leadership. When did our personality form? It formed when we were young. How did it form? Well, it formed partly by the brain we're born with and partly by the messages that we got as kids. The messages that we got about how we need to be and who we are as a person, our value as a person. And we bring those messages, those things, into our leadership in ways that would surprise you. And all this requires kind of shifting a mindset. And I'm going to pause the PowerPoint for a second. I want to go back to this. I want to build on it a little bit. Our three components of personality. Right? I'm going to change this from thoughts to beliefs, because we said we're going to focus on those two beliefs. We have our emotions. You have your emotions cheat sheet there. And we have our behavior. And I'm going to walk you through an example using myself, my own personality, how I was raised as a kid, to help you understand how I want you to build this model for yourself. We all get messages from our parents as we're growing up. Some of those messages are very positive. There are things about, Steve, I'm so proud of you. Steve, you brought home an A on your math paper. Never happened, but I'm proud of you. Those feel good. And from that, I learned how I need to be. I learned I need to be smart if I want to get approval from mom or dad. And I also get messages that are kind of don't feel so good. Like messages such as, Steve, I'm so disappointed in you. And I also hear things like, son, you're never going to amount to anything. At times of frustration, my dad would say that, son, you're never going to amount to anything if you keep thinking like that. You gotta be smart, son. And in those moments that I'm getting these messages, I'm learning about how to be in the world to get success. If my dad told me once, he told me 1,000 times, son, you got to think. You got to think. You got to be smart. If you're going to be successful in life, you got to be smart. So, that became part of my personality, part of my belief system. I got to be smart to achieve. I also got messages around be strong. And that wasn't just like physical strength, although there's a component to that. It's also emotional strength. My dad sees me crying. He says, son, get up. You skin your knee, rub some dirt in it, right? Anybody have that, Dad? Right? Rub some dirt in it, son. Right? You got to be tough. If you're going to be successful in life, you got to be tough. You got to be willing to barrel through challenges. Okay? Be smart. Be strong. I remember one time, I would leave my tricycle in the driveway. And my mom and dad would be so angry at me because they couldn't pull the car in if the tricycle's sitting in the middle of the driveway. They'd have to get out and move the tricycle. Well, one time my dad came home from work, the tricycle sitting in the driveway. He didn't see it, and he hit it and destroyed it and dented the car, and it was a big thing, right? And, you know, my mom and dad are, son, you've got to be responsible with your things. You need to be responsible. And I heard, it wasn't that one incident, it was lots of times where I heard, son, you got to be responsible. And so I learned, be responsible. All of these are ways I learned to be in order to achieve success. And we all got those messages. We all got them. You have them. And in a minute, you're going to do an exercise to help you identify, okay, what are those for me? What are my B's? Right? But we also got those negative messages. Right? Those negative messages about, son, I'm so disappointed in you. I can't believe that you did that. In that moment, how did I think or feel about myself? What do you think? Huh? Bad, yeah. Yeah. What might be the thought that might be going through my head in that moment about me as a person? I'm not worth it. I'm a mess up. I can't do anything right. And I have this belief that sits out here that is a negative belief about me as a person. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I don't fit in. Right? But what was that? What did I say about that? What do we know about how children look at beliefs? That message that I put up there when nobody was looking. We focus on the positive. As young kids, we put our attention on things that feel good, and we ignore things that feel bad. What's that?
Means adults change.
Yeah, as adults we change, absolutely, yeah. But as young kids, our focus is to feel good. If a kid doesn't feel good, they let you know so that you can fix it because they want to feel good. And we put our attention on those beliefs that feel good as young kids, and we ignore those beliefs that don't feel good. And what happens is those beliefs kind of shift. They go into, I'm going to put it over here. I'm just going to use, I'm not good enough. They go into our unawareness. So our model just got a little more complex. We got an aware side, and we have an unaware side. My guess is we have a room full of successful people in here. And my guess is none of you walk around with this on the front of your forehead, right? Now, there are times that this shows up for you. There are times that belief happens and becomes activated. But by and large, you operate over here. So do I. Right? This has been really good for me. It got me where I am today. Be smart. I studied hard in school, got my PhD, had a career I love. Be strong. Yeah, I mean that's, that I power through things. I am able to, I have grit. I have determination. It's helped me achieve things in life. Be responsible. I've been married 40 years. I got 2 successful daughters. I'm a responsible guy. This has worked really well for me. But sometimes there's a thing out there in life, we call them triggers, and I have a very specific definition of a trigger. A trigger is something that I think is putting this at risk. A trigger is where I think, uh-oh, people aren't seeing me the way I want to be viewed. This is how I want to be seen. This is how I want you guys to see me. I want you to see me smart, strong, responsible. People that are important to me. That's how I want them to see me. But in those scenarios where I think, they think I'm a fool, or they think I've been irresponsible, or they think that I'm weak, what happens is that trigger blows right through this, what I call success drivers, and activates this belief here, which I call the self-limiting belief. We all got one. If you were raised in a family, if you were raised anywhere, if you were a 5-year-old at one time, you have a self-limiting belief. Because we all had those experiences where we just didn't feel like we lived up to what we wanted to live up to. But because we don't focus on it, it goes over here into our unawareness, right? And it stays over there unless this gets threatened, right? Now, 4 things to know about this belief over here. Number 1, I've said it, we all got them. I got one, you got one, your bosses have them, your people have them, we all got them. If we're human, we got it. Number 2, it's not true. It's a belief that was created by a 5-year-old. It's a self-limiting belief that is what I call the big fat lie. It's not true. I'm sorry, what's your name? Betty? Betty said it, right? She said, when I said, where's our value come from? It comes from God, right? Our value as a person is not dependent on doing this. Our value as a person is much, much different than that. Yet as kids, we connect that. And so when we think we're not living up to our success script, we begin to question our value as a person. So number 1, we all got it. Number 2, it's not true. Number 3, and this is important, because it forms, that belief forms when our personality is forming, we can never shake it. Even though we know it's a totally irrational belief, we all know that right now, I just told you, it's irrational, it's not true, we can never shake it. It's woven into our personality. And number 4, most importantly, that belief leaks out and impacts our life, our leadership, our decision making at the very time that we need it to stay hidden. And so what happens is, something happens, a trigger happens, someone sees me as weak or sees me as being irresponsible. This belief gets activated in my head. An emotion shows up for me, and it's one of the core negative emotions. What are the 2 core negative emotions? Fear or hurt. Yeah. For me, it's fear. It can be either. Sometimes it's both. Fear. And just to be clear, what's it a fear of? Not being good enough, and that you will discover that about me, right? And then that fear drives behaviors inside my body. We're talking about stress. We're talking about difficult times. During difficult times, when we're operating on that stress curve, over here is when this happens for us. My stomach starts to churn, my jaw gets tight. My heart starts to race, my blood pressure goes up. But I've learned, hide this stuff. That's a hidden emotion. I don't want to show fear. I learned that from an early age. Don't show fear. Anybody else got that message? Yeah. Don't show fear. Don't show hurt. And when this starts to happen, I try to ignore it. I try to push it down so that I can function. But what happens instead is, what comes out is a visible behavior that is defensive. I get abrasive, I get cynical, I start blaming, all to protect this, right? All to protect this. And so when I start getting cynical, and I get critical, and maybe raising my voice, maybe I'm getting real animated, what's the emotion that people would interpret that I have? Anger, yeah. Because I've learned, hey, it's okay to show anger. Not excessively, but within moderation, I can show anger, right? Because this is okay. This is not, even though this is a cover for that. And this is the difficulty that we have when we approach difficult times. This process begins to take place. There's two ways that it can happen. One way is it happens literally in about 3 milliseconds. It happens like that. It's when you get blindsided. It's like when you're feeling good, you're happy, you're satisfied, things are going well, you walk in the office, you turn on the computer, you see an email from your most important client, and they've decided that they're going with somebody else. Boom, you just got blindsided. And now all of a sudden you're angry and your staff sees it, your team sees it, and however you display defensive behavior, they know it. The other way that it can happen is what I call the long burning fuse, or the slow burning fuse. And that's where you're in a time, you're in a recessionary period. You're in a period when the phone's not ringing and you need it to ring. You're in a period when your important people are leaving the organization and you're having trouble filling those positions. And you're operating over here on the stress curve for longer periods of time. And what's going on is that this balance between the thinking part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain, is just like it's right there. And all it takes is one little tiny thing to trigger you, put you over the edge, and you have the limbic system hijack. Okay. Any questions about this? This is a hard concept for people to grab. It's a difficult concept to work out for yourself. But the good news is you're going to get a chance to do it. What we're going to do is an exercise. We'll take a break because I recognize that it's 10 o'clock and you guys have been drinking coffee. So what we're going to do, we're going to take let's do 10 minutes, a quick 10-minute bio break. Use the restroom, grab yourself something to eat, grab a drink. We'll come back at 10:10, and we're going to do an exercise that's going to help you figure this out for yourself. Okay? Okay.